All right, howdy everybody. We are live on the Where to Hunt podcast. Just got done doing a W2H Rut Club radio segment. We had two callers, so stay tuned. There'll be two giveaways tomorrow. I'm sorry, there'll be one giveaway tomorrow. There's going to be two candidates that could win because there's only two callers, so the odds of one of those guys winning is about as good as a game of roulette at the casino. If you want to jump in on that stuff and report on rut activity and stories from last year, etc., every Tuesday, 6 to 6:30 p.m., it'll get you a chance to win some cool gear from Heated Hunts. But before I get into our interview and guest of the show today, call out to the company that gives me the energy to do this show. For those of you that don't know, I get into this podcast, quotation marks, studio, because it's just like a room in my house. So it's not much of a studio, but I get in here at 5:30 when I get home from my day job, and I will not walk out of this room till about 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. And so quite literally, Backwoods Grind gives me the energy to do this. So I'm still drinking the coffee that I had from the Rut Radio segment. And if you want to see what they're all about, go to backwoodsgrind.com. Take a look at their website. Their products are front and center on their page. The one I'll recommend today, just because it's fall, it's crispy, it's one of the season's kind of getting there, I'd highly recommend their Fireside Blend. And if you want to try it rather than buy the whole bag, try their 6-pack or their 3-pack sampler. It's a really low-cost way to try a couple of flavors and see what you like without having to break the bank. And then, these guys support the NWTF, the Backwoods Hunters and Anglers, QDMA, and the National Deer Alliance. So your money's going to a good place. And if you want to save some of that money, if you look at the screen, enter in code W2H podcast, and you can save 10%. So that's my spiel for Backwoods Grind. We're going to go ahead and bring on our guest, Chris Johnson with Johnson Outdoors. What's up, dude? How you doing?
Go on, man. Not too much. Just happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're happy to be here. You're a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, in my opinion. That might not be the case internally, but as far as from what I see, I don't think you're the kind of guy that can have a bad day, man. I just love your demeanor.
You'd be surprised, buddy, but I appreciate it.
I probably would be surprised, but
yeah.
You do great stuff, man. And we connected through this crazy internet of people getting to know each other online, not a dating site. It was just, people, hunters following hunters. That might be the name of a dating site.
Yeah. The fact you swiped left on me on Farmers Only, I'm still a little salty about, but it'll be all right.
Yeah, you're in purgatory on Farmers Only.
Yeah, right.
So let's tell the audience who you are, man. Take a couple of minutes here and let's unpack who Chris Johnson is and who Johnson Outdoors is, where you from, how long you've been hunting, all that kind of good stuff.
All right. Well, first and foremost, hey, y'all. Chris Johnson from West Palm Beach, Florida. Born and raised down there, hunting hogs and the little tiny deer that we got. Ain't nothing like these Midwestern deer up here, but active duty military. So I'm into Coast Guard, and I got transferred. Been in for 10 years now, but I got transferred from back home in Florida. I was in Puerto Rico, then I got up in Florida, and now I'm here in Illinois. Been here since 2016. And as far as the whole Johnson Outdoors deal, basically I have had dreams since I was 8 years old. Like when me and my dad were sitting watching Realtree Outdoors and Buckmasters and all that on the couch ever since I can remember. And I had a dream that one day I'd be out doing that stuff. And, at the very least, I'd get to meet these guys and stuff like that. So just following that dream growing up ever since 8 years old, killed my first deer, and just been bit with it ever since. So went and started picked up a camera, started taking pictures of these deer because I was losing my mind in the off season. And I wanted to be able to still chase the animals without getting in trouble with the game warden. So figured camera was the best way to do that, and found out that I can go into places with a camera that you can't even go in with a gun. So I got some pictures of some big bucks and some nice turkeys and stuff like that back home in Florida, and I just brought it with me. And then it turned into where, well, I'm telling hunting stories, and somebody's like, man, and I keep wondering, man, I wish I could show you. I wish I could show you. So went and got me a little cheap handy cam and started filming my hunts and throwing them up on YouTube. And then was like, well, hell, I don't even talk about what my inner thoughts are, so why don't I start a blog? So I started doing that. And then just in my mind, I was doing my own thing. I was like, well, hell, I need a way to bring this all together. So I hired Jordan Johnson with Combination Creative to do a logo for me. And we came up with Johnson Outdoors and the little logo that I got. And that's about it. My main mission now that I've taken some time and sat and thought about it is I want to get hunter numbers up. Like, I look at guys like Waddell and Jim Shockey and, you know, really idolize those guys because they're the type of person I want to be like. I want to be the guy who gets somebody who's never even thought of picking up a bow or a rifle out in the woods and hooked and getting bit by that bug so we can get these numbers up. I know a big complaint of guys on public land is, oh, there's too many people out here. Well, really the issue is there's not enough land. There's more lands or more hunters and more voices. There potentially be more land. At least that's the way I look at it.
That's a good perspective, dude. That's a good mission to have. You're off to a really strong start. You know, you kind of, in my opinion, I know you've been at it since you were 8 years old, right? But as far as the social media scene is concerned, you showed up and boom, like that logo, that little logo you got from Combination Creative, they did a damn good job because that is a really strong logo and it sets you apart right out of the gate. I mean, like, it gave you a platform to stand on for people to kind of tune in, and that's seemingly what's continuing to happen for you. So I'm really excited for you, and I'm happy that you're on this show, you know, because hopefully that means you'll always come back anytime I want you. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, man, anytime. Just give me a holler, day or night.
Well, so let's take a small second to bring in. We do have a caller, so I'm going to bring in our caller, and we'll do this.
Big call.
So who do we got on the line?
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Good. We can hear you. You told me not to tell him who's calling. I know who it is.
So do I. There's always good old Big Hoss.
You can't pull over Chris, man. He's in there with us. So what's up, Haas? How you doing?
Oh, driving down the road like always, man.
You know, I got to meet you both at the Working Class shoot. And Haas, dude,
yeah.
You really lived up to your name. You are a big dude. Holy crap. Like, you were not kidding. I was like, holy shit. And I take that as a compliment.
Hard to
you know? Holy freaking crap.
Kind of hard to miss in public, that's for sure.
That is, yeah. How are things going for you, man? What do you want to contribute to the show today? Well, we got you for a minute or two.
Well, Chris was talking about something that we've been kind of hitting hard lately, and he kind of started out strong with it. You're talking about people not having, or it seems like we don't have enough public lands, like being crowded and stuff, right? And
yep.
I think a big issue with that, and the reason why we don't have that, and I think it comes down to education, people just don't know, is supporting companies that are here in the United States, not just us because I'm part of a company, but realistically, American-based companies, the people that put the money through the FET tax, federal excise tax, also known as Pitt-Robertson Act, is what pays for all this stuff. And I think that
yep.
the hunter, the average hunter, regardless of if you're a bow hunter or rifle hunter or even hikers and bikers and anybody that utilizes our public land, I think they need to be educated a little bit more about where they buy their products and what companies they support, because that is a very large, extremely large portion of what is able to maintain public lands and get acquisition to more. And with hunter numbers declining and people going and to save $2 or $3 and buying something that's a knockoff overseas is what's really hurting our public land access. Because if you don't support the companies that are paying the majority of that federal excise tax, then we're going to start losing these public lands. We're going to start losing access, and those issues are only going to get bigger.
Dude, you know a lot more about that stuff than I do. Holy crap. I'm coming at that problem from a whole different angle, but that's some truth right there. If you got any information, Haas, for links and things like that for us to check out online and ways that we can help as a collective audience, when you're not driving, pop back into this feed and please share some of that stuff for us. And folks that listen to the podcast, they can pop in later too and get at it with us.
Yeah, I'll send you some links, man, later today. Once I get pulled over, I'll send you some links. If for anybody listening, if they want to go and after the show, anyway, and kind of research the Pittman-Robertson Act. It was all started by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's all based on conservation. The Pittman-Robertson Act is the reason why we have our public lands, our game wardens, our wildlife biologists, our parks and rec people, even just park rangers and the people that clean up our wildlife areas. That's how they all get paid, is through the funds that are accumulated through companies selling products in the United States and paying that federal excise tax. And I don't think people think about it that much. And, they look for, being archery specific, they look for broadheads or they look for anything. Camo, they're looking, even some bows now that I've been seeing. And people are just buying them from China or they're getting them on eBay or something of that nature. And that's not, I get it, being a working class guy. Or pinch penny. I get that. But if you're really concerned about having public land access and being able to enjoy the outdoors, regardless of how you do it, we need to be a little bit more mindful on why that's available. So you can research the Pittman-Robertson Act and check that out and kind of see what it started off as a voluntary tax that the outdoor industry decided to voluntarily pay. It's now required, which none of us have a problem with when it really comes down to it. But I think people just need to be a little bit more mindful.
It's a good piece of awareness. Dude, thanks for dropping that knowledge on us, man. We got another call in the queue, so I'm gonna bring the next one on, bud. Stay tuned in and continue to comment and engage. I appreciate it a whole bunch.
For sure, man. Chris, thanks for bringing that up initially, man. Doing it the right way.
Yeah, buddy. Love you, Halls.
All right, brother. Yeah, we'll talk to that later, man.
There's a lot to love. I'm gonna bring in the next caller. We're gonna roll with it. We got Zach, who's been on the show before. Zach Hoheisel of Appleton. You're live on this show, bud. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Have you heard of Johnson Outdoors and Chris? You can follow him on Instagram or anything?
I don't yet. I'll definitely have to check it out after this. I just had a question for him, and I guess for any other listeners that are tuning in right now on something that's weird that I've noticed this year. Shoot. So, have any of you guys noticed that bucks are holding velvet super late this year? Because I pulled my cards last Sunday, and all of my target bucks, my more mature deer, as of last weekend, are still holding all of their velvet. Okay, so I ain't no expert. I'm going to start that off flat first and foremost, but with the QDMA, I'm going to shout them out right quick, Quality Deer Management Association. They offer a course called the Deer Steward course, and it's like $200 for somebody, but they also have scholarships and stuff, so reach out to your local QDMA representative, and they may be able to give you more information on that. But I took the course, and they explained a little bit about that, how it's actually weather that affects that. So with bucks, it's testosterone levels that end up keying up when to shed velvet, when to grow antler, when it's time to start kicking into the rut. contrary to popular belief, everybody seems to think that deer movement affects off weather, off moon phase, off barometric pressure, the laundry list goes on. But just through research, I'm not saying that it doesn't affect it, but through the research, they have shown no correlation with that, except for one single period where you had the coldest day, and it was like a week where it was negative 30s, and then all of a sudden it jumped up to 20 degrees. Buck movement increased during that time, but that's beside the point. Going back to what you're saying, you also noticed, though, last year, because of the type of winter we had, it was kind of a harsh winter, they held on to their antler a little bit more, too. And I think that's just a correlation. That's just my personal opinion on it. I've noticed the same. Like, we're just now in central Illinois, we're starting to get bucks to shed their velvet a little bit. So I can kind of see where you're at with that. And even around, like, we got Kentucky and other states that are open right now, and they're shooting bucks still in velvet. So, yeah, I've noticed it too, man.
Yeah, it looks like my buddy Joel just commented too. He just sent me a text this morning of some deer, maybe it was yesterday morning, that he had taken some pictures of, but he said, yeah, he just saw a large 6 still covered in velvet, and 2 days later saw an 8 with no velvet. So deer to deer might be a little bit different, but that's up here in Wisconsin, right? He's not far from me. He's probably like 5 minutes from me, actually.
Yeah, that's something interesting. I mean, normally we get them I would say normally this time of year, it's the weekend before over, I would say 90% of my bucks normally are out of velvet at this point. And I notice they're still there, and I'm kind of with you, and I'm a firm believer in, like, what the science says, especially considering, like, the rut, I believe the science says the rut, it tends to, as far as the actual breeding occurs within the same kind of 7 days, the majority of it in the 7 days, but I'm wondering with this kind of weird thing I'm noticing if it's going to be a later rut this year or what that's all about.
So with the rut, and they touch on this in that course as well, with the rut, it kicks off of only photocentric. So what that means is the length of daylight throughout the day. So you always hear about guys, oh, my buck went nocturnal. Well, there's deer that aren't even hunted at all with no pressure whatsoever that go nocturnal. It's just deer to deer is their personality trait. But what kicks off the rut is when the days start getting shorter. So that's why during that daylight savings time, usually it's about a week following that or within that week that we start seeing the rut kick off. So ultimately what you need to do for your certain area is your DNR is going to have what they have called the rut prediction and stuff like that. Or at least I know Florida does that. I don't know if Wisconsin does it as well.
No, we just got the Rut Radio Club up here.
There you go. Shameless plug. Nice.
Yeah.
But no, so they have those types of rut maps and stuff like that, and you can kind of see what everybody else in the country is doing. But like with Florida, the deer rut year round, so there is no real change for us because we're so far down there. Now that being said, up here in the Great White North, I've noticed 5 a.m. it's bright and sunny outside, so it varies based on the photocentric, like the length of daylight and when that is. I hope that kind of helps a little bit. I know I'm kind of talking in circles a little bit.
You're not. That's really, really good information. And even listing the resources off, I didn't realize that QDMA offered classes like that. Like, how did you? That's awesome, man. Thank you, Chris. And Zach, really awesome question, man.
Yeah. It was just something real interesting that I noticed, and it wasn't just like one or two. All of my mature deer, like I said, as of last Saturday, were still in velvet, and that is far from the norm, for me, anyway.
That's good stuff. Well, Zach, I'll drop you off. I got another caller right behind you here, so we'll bring them on. Thanks for tuning in, man. Continue to tune in for this show, and you can always call back in, too, if you got another question.
Yeah, sounds good. See ya.
Thanks, bud.
Bye, bud.
We're just going to keep rolling through some of these. We got Joel out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. You're live on the show. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, E-Money?
You finally made it on the show, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I tried to call last week when D-Rock was on, but right when I got on, my phone died on me because I was having too much fun listening to it. So
Yeah, that's funny.
I got two things. One to caveat off of Zach's comment. Literally just last week up here in Wisconsin, I seen a nice 6-pointer. Well, most people say 6s aren't nice, but it was a good-bodied 6-pointer, and it was still in full velvet. And literally about 2 fields over, I found 2 more large 8s and possibly a 10, and neither one of them had a bit of velvet left on them. So I don't know if it's because them two were fighting or if it's something with the genes or, because it's not too far away. I was just wondering about that, what Zach thought about that.
You mean Chris? Well, Zach might have some thoughts too, but Zach can comment. Chris can talk through it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're good, buddy. So it varies from deer to deer, according to QDMA and that course. Like I said, I'm going to reference that course because I learned so much information from them that's basically where I got the more extensive knowledge. Like I said, I ain't no expert by any means, but with that, it's the testosterone levels of the certain deer. So your big 6 may haven't for lack of better words, had his nuts drop yet to where he's got that testosterone going to where he's going to start shedding the velvet because that's what triggers that. That's what triggers that change from velvet to thing. And he could still be growing. Like he may, I know it's kind of hard to think that they might still be growing this late, but as long as there's velvet on, they say deer put on about a 1/4 inch a day at a minimum while they're still in velvet. I'm remembering the stats correctly. So he could still be growing and getting even bigger. So,
wow.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point.
As far as 6 points, I love big 6 points. I actually have a 115-inch 5-point on my wall right now.
Holy shit.
Shot in Georgia, so
I
love them big, unique deer.
Now, I got one other theory I want to throw by you here, if that's okay, if I still got time on the air.
You do. There's no one behind you right now, which I know you don't like. You like guys behind you, but... Come on.
I only bit you, buddy.
Don't make me spit out my beer.
You can follow that, don't worry.
Oh, here we go.
I'm sorry, I got in front with it.
You're good, buddy.
So, I got an old philosophy. I used to have a little bit of private land I used to be able to hunt on, and when opening weekend would always come up, I would always avoid that like the plague, because I would always hunt the public lands, thinking that if I put pressure on all the public lands, it's going to drive the deer into my private lands, and then I can hunt them later in the season when the mosquitoes ain't so bad, and I don't have to give so much blood and everything. But I no longer have that private land. But I don't want to necessarily jump in first thing into the public land and spook everything out or have to try to compete. Would you suggest maybe just like leaving the hard-to-reach spots alone, and then after a couple of weeks, after everyone pressures the easy access spots and the parking lots and the open fields, to go in and hit those thickets?
So my personal thought, it all depends. So I don't want you to give away your spot or anything, but with that private land, is somebody else hunting it right now?
Well, I gave it back to my buddy hunting it. He's bringing his daughter into bow hunting, so I'm caping off it because I want his daughter to be able to get out and get a bow and get a deer and have the enjoyment of that. So I completely avoid that place now because I'm letting her get into the group of hunting. I don't want to impede on that by any means.
Gotcha. Okay, so ultimately, I would say it depends on the pressure because public land is going to be pressured no matter what. And what you've essentially created there is a sanctuary for your bucks that you tend to go in and hunt the sanctuary later on. So that being said, deer are going to go where there's less human movement. So if there's a lot of movement on that public land, it doesn't matter if you were hunting it early or not. You got people traffic to look at. So like one of the things that I've seen in articles and stuff that I've read is that a lot of guys, they'll go 100 yards from the parking area, and the only reason why they do that is because everybody walks past that wanting to go deeper and deeper and deeper, but the bucks actually bed down right outside that parking area because everybody just walks right past them, and they're able to continue on without having to get that pressure put on them. And some people have capitalized like that. I know, shout out to Walter Lee down in from the Chasing Tails podcast, but he hunts public land pretty religiously, and he's gotten to, and same with Connor Wakefield, Whitetail Drifter. They hunt public land pretty religiously, and they've gotten to where they start to pattern people. So whereas everybody goes out, before sunrise and gets out there, and then leaves about 2 hours after sunrise comes up because they're bored and they haven't seen anything, the deer start moving in the middle of the day. And I know from me, every time I've seen deer on public land, it's usually after hunters are starting to leave the woods. And I would sit all day whenever I got out in the tree stand, but that's just me. I would ultimately what you're going with, if you have food sources, that's where you're going to want to capitalize early season. So don't hit them in the mornings, hit them in the evenings, because in the morning, them deer are going to be out in those fields feeding or on those food sources. So you're going to want to try to stay out of that. An old saying is hit the timber in the morning and hit the fields in the evening. But I don't know if that does anything for you, but that would be my recommendation. First and foremost, you need to worry about your scent and where the wind is going to go.
Yeah.
Because that's going to cause more pressure to any big buck than anything else. So if you got these spots and one of your spots is only good on a north wind, then don't go in there on anything less than a north wind. At least that's where I see it.
Well, I appreciate that. That's intriguing. I never thought of, patterning the hunters as opposed to the deer. I mean,
because
changes the whole aspect of how I look at that now for public lands.
Yeah, because, they're creatures of habit. So what they're going to do is they're going to see, all right, when's the least time I'm pressured? If everybody's trying to get into the woods at about 5:30 in the morning before the sun comes up, that's probably when they're going to hold tight to their beds. And then they'll know those 2-3 hours. And something I learned in that course, and this will just kind of mess with your mind a little bit, is deer's stomachs, the way they're structured, they have to eat every 4 hours. So even though that doesn't, you figure you sit in all day you're sitting out there 16 hours. That means that buck has gotten up, moved, and eaten at least 4 times in that time you've been sitting there. So you have to find out what food source he's hitting, whether or not he's got food in the area he's bedded. They're creatures of habit and they're lazy. They're going to go the path of least resistance. So if they only need to go 5 yards to eat a persimmon or a crab apple or whatever, they're going to do that rather than travel to hit that big soybean or cornfield that's out there and everybody's set up on.
That is something I did not know. So you are, as Lance Brown commented, full of knowledge. And this is very good information. Joel, dude, these are really good questions too, man. Thank you for provoking some thought here.
Oh.
Better the question. You want to be the host?
Of course, I appreciate it.
Sit over here with me.
No, God, no. I couldn't do what you do, man.
I
still got one more kid to put down. I got
scotch.
Yeah, well, I'll help you out with a beer.
There we go.
There you go.
Thanks for calling in, buddy. And by the way,
right, I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Joel is the one that sniffed my deer out of the woods 2 years ago.
Oh. You left it there just so I'd smell it.
Uh-huh. You freak. All right, buddy. You have a good night.
You too. Thanks, buzz.
Later, bud.
So we're good on calls for a minute. This is what makes this show interesting. I've stopped doing call notes and show notes because you have a plan and then someone calls in, then we get totally on a different track. In this case, it's uncovered all sorts of great nuggets that you got tucked away there. I wish I knew which other questions to ask based on what you got in that noggin. You mentioned you're not the sharpest crayon in the box or whatever, and you're no expert. And you mentioned you're in the military. I wanted to, let's just switch gears for a second here, because you told me one hell of a story when we were in Illinois at the shoot, and being in the Coast Guard, I don't remember if someone had asked, what's the craziest thing you had seen, but you had one hell of a story, dude. And so I just want to take a minute to, let's switch gears, get out of deer mode and get into drug busting mode.
Okay. So with that, it was when I was in Puerto Rico. I was in San Juan, Puerto Rico on a 110-foot patrol boat. Basically, our only job down there is to look for illegal immigrants trying to come into the country and drug runners. That's all we do. And we're out there. I remember it was like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. We got the call. They're like, hey, you need to go. And we were the only fully enlisted crew. And what I mean by that is most of the time you have a mixture of officers and enlisted on these cutters. We were the only one that was all enlisted. The CO, or commanding officer, was a warrant officer, so he was prior enlisted that got a commission, is how that works. Well, we had some intel that there was a drug boat out in a certain location, and go get them, basically. I mean, that was the extent of our intel. We didn't know what type of boat. We didn't know who we were chasing. So we get out there, and when you get out in the middle of the ocean at the middle of the night, it's pitch black dark. There are no lights. The only light you have are the stars. And this night, and a lot of times the moonlight, like, you'd be surprised how bright a full moon is, but you honestly cannot see a single thing on this night. I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, basically close your eyes, and that's how it was operating out there. And we got red lights to kind of help with our night vision. But we had counter-op helicopters and planes, and, you know, you never hear them, you never see them, you have no idea they're up there, but they're just come over the radio and they tell you, like, they're watching through infrared, and they're like, hey, you're right next to them. And we're like, all right, well, where are we? They're like, no, you're right on top of them. So our CO, after trying to find where these guys were, just finally said, fuck it. And we flipped on all our spotlights, all our searchlights, and our blue lights, and there they are right next to us within 50 yards of the cutter.
Damn.
And we were about as surprised to see them as they were to see us, and they just started dumping bales overboard as much as possible. And as they were dumping these bales overboard, they went to running. Now, this is normally when you deal with these drug and migrant boats, it's not like you would see on TV where it's a cigarette boat that's all souped up and suited out. Like, no, it's a little 19-foot boat with 2 guys running it, loaded down with 50 people, and that's what you're chasing. But this...
Oop, did I lose you, bud? Technical difficulty. It shows you're still there. Hey, Chris, I think your phone dropped off or got muted or something. Right at the, like, cliffhanger. Terrible timing. Stand by, everybody. You there, Chris? Oh man, right at the best possible spot. It shows you are still with me, bud. It might be your line. Let me send you a quick text. Hang in there with us, folks. It ain't a podcast unless you have a technical glitch. That's what I say. And I think that's pretty real. If you run a podcast and you've not had a technical glitch, you've not run a podcast. I'm going to give Chris a quick text here and make sure he's good to go. Stand by. You muted. Or something. If you're still watching, hang in there. Trying to get him back right now.
You hear me now?
Yeah, you're back. Maybe you get the mute button. It was like right at the best part too. It just like boom, cut off.
All right.
We got you though.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Get him back right now.
So I got you.
Yeah, you're back.
1 second.
Maybe you get the move.
Sorry about that. I had you muted on the video feed, so I wasn't able to do that. So what did y'all miss? I guess
it was like
headphones jacked
when
up on
you're
me.
like, so it's not like they're on a cigarette boat, and then that was it.
Okay, so usually with those boats and stuff, hell, you lost me a while back. My bad. So it's not usually like they're on cigarette boats or anything like that. They're on 19-foot boats ran by two guys loaded down with 50 people, and that's what's running from you. They can't go very fast. So that's where they end up going, or that's what you end up chasing. This time, that wasn't the case. It was a cigarette boat loaded down like you would see on Miami Vice or something like that.
Yep.
And these guys started just booking it away from us as fast as they could go. And obviously their engine is souped up a whole lot more than a 110-foot boat can go. And they start dumping bales as fast as they can. And I firmly believe if they weren't able to dump the bales so fast that we would have been able to catch them. But they dumped all the contraband and were able to outrun us. However, the contraband they dumped was 50 kilos of pure uncut, or 50 bales of pure uncut Colombian cocaine.
Damn.
Each bale had 25 kilos in it, and the total weight ended up coming out to 1.8 tons. The street value of that was over $99 million, which we did the math. If we took one bale, sold it at street value, and mixed it up amongst the crew, they ended up.
Did you do that math?
We would have each walked away with them after the bus.
Okay,
After
sure. I'm just kidding.
We'd have each walked away with $128,000, and it's just one of those deals. Like, it's cool to break it down even more. I mean, it's nice to, you got 1.8 tons, street value $99 million. Cool. But if we'd have broken up, we'd have had this much. Damn it. Why do we have to be ethical? So, but, I mean, then there's case after case where we've gotten migrants. I mean, we got tons of migrants in Florida. We got tons of migrants in Puerto Rico. And there's times where I've been in 8-foot seas and flown about 5 feet through the air to jump on a migrant boat to put it in tow. So, stupid things you do while you're enlisted, but, that's basically it. And then there's the search and rescue missions, which personally, when they're a legit search and rescue mission, that's what I prefer. I prefer actually going out there and making a difference and helping people that are in trouble and otherwise may lose their lives if it weren't for you. So, I mean, that's what's kind of cool to me. And then as far as so I'll tell a quick story right quick. As far as we're talking about up here, everybody likes to go sailing out in Lake Michigan. That's one of the biggest things. And with these sailors, they have they're called Hobie cats. So it's a little catamaran, and they flip over all the time, but a lot of the experienced guys can self-ride them, flip them right back over, and do it all over again. Well, this one time, the boat flipped, and the guy wasn't able to get it flipped back over, and the mast broke, and just everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And it turns out he had his girlfriend out there with him at the time, and it was like one of her first time sailing. And we roll up on him. It's snotty. It's about 5-foot seas. We get out there, and they're sitting on top of the hull, so we end up throwing some heaving lines and pulling them in and getting them to the boat. We get the girlfriend first and put her on the boat. And at first, they both were wearing wetsuits and life jackets, so they wore everything that they needed to do. But we get her in the boat and out of the elements, and she just starts breaking down, bawling. I guess the gravity of the situation hit her. And we get the guy, and we pull him on, and he's kind of chill and even keel. And he's like, so are you guys going to tow my boat back in? We're like, no, dude, we got you. That's all we care about. And he's like, all right. And we're like, so what are we going to do about this boat? And we start doing the whole headquarters and jumping through hoops thing that comes with being in the job I'm in. And he's like, what about my boat? What about my boat? And then finally he goes, fuck it, just leave it. So we left it floating out there. So I'm saying to this day it's still floating out there. No, I have no idea what ended up coming of the boat, man. But we got them inside, and they were safe sound. And as far as I know, hopefully a little bit smarter and learned from it. But there's an old coastie. He had a saying, and I always think it's the greatest saying. He goes, I joined the Coast Guard because I thought it was cool that we were the only military service that operated while not at war. But then I realized we're constantly at war with stupidity.
That's great, dude. Well,
there isn't a single phrase that could have been more true with that.
That's funny, dude. You mentioned a couple of things in the bigger story where we lost you for a second about, like, there is a plane that was flying above in stealth mode, or just high enough that it didn't matter, and they're using infrared to tell you, like, you're right on top of the boat you're chasing, and then you guys flip the lights on right there. Sure, it'd be nice if you could do that in the deer woods. Have a plane tell you, dude, there's a deer right there, and you flip the lights on the forest, and boom, you could be good to go. Because those damn animals, man, they're like ghosts. They could be right there, and you really don't know it.
Well, it's funny you say that. And everybody always talks about these monster mature deer that you're chasing, and that's what you want, is that big mature buck and blah, blah, blah. No, this buck, and it just goes to show, like, these deer are completely different animals. So this buck we had on camera at my property that I hunt. So I hunt, real quick, I hunt both public and private, but on the private piece I hunt, we had this deer. He can't be more than 2 years old, at least at the time that we were getting the pictures. And he's just a freak. I mean, he's got brow tines that are probably 11 inches each, and then just a gaggle of, he's a non-typical deer. Like, he's got big palmated rack with tines going every which way, like 3 drop tines coming off of it. And he's a 2-year-old. And I remember seeing him as a 1-year-old last year, where he had the big old long brows. His brow tines were probably 6-7 inches each. And then he had what looked like a double main beam coming out on the one side. He's just an absolute freak, but he's a 2-year-old deer. And you always see these articles, 2 and 3-year-olds are stupid. This dude, up until every single time we had trail camera pictures of him, it was directly at sunrise and directly at sunset. First light, last light, that's the only time you would ever see him. And he would come to this mock scrape that I had, and that's when you would see him, is first light, last light, never daylight. I think every other buck we'd have at least one daylight picture, not him. First light, last light, and then sometimes in the middle of the night he'd show up. Well, one of the mornings I get out there, and I have my little light and I shine where the stand is, and unfortunately where my stand is right where that mock scrape is.
Yep.
So I get up in the stand and stuff, and I don't see any eyes looking at me or nothing like that. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can get up in the stand and I'm good. Get up in the stand, and I settle in. I'm screwing in the little camera arm. It takes me about 15 minutes to get all settled in and quiet. So I get out there plenty early time to do that. Once I'm settled in, I look and I see a little buck. I know it's a buck, but I don't know. It didn't look like anything big. And he walks directly underneath my stand and up the little ravine, crosses the creek, and goes up the hill. Well, I was kind of watched where he went and wasn't too worried about it. And I cleared my throat just because, early mornings you get all that gunk caught up in your throat. And I hear, hopefully that's not a big deer. I checked the trail camera that evening. There was a little spike and that buck right there, probably 5 minutes before I got to the stand. They were probably sitting at the base of that tree while I was changing out in the truck.
Damn, dude.
So it just goes to show, like,
they're right there. Yep.
Sometimes they're there and you have no clue.
Yeah, it's always awkward when you hear someone, you clear your throat and someone says, bless you. And you're like, ugh.
Yeah, I actually had an experience like that on public land back home in Florida. So where I'm at in Florida, we don't have a ton of public land that's just open to everybody to go hunt. A lot of it is what are called quota hunts, where you have to put in, and it's a lottery draw on whether or not you can kill deer in this area. And then when you put in for it, you can only kill deer during this certain weekend along with the other quota hunt permits and blah, 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 blah. Well, we get to this one spot, and it's highly pressured those are my homies back home. It's Corbett. Climb up the tree, or I didn't even have a tree stand at the time. I didn't have a climber, so I had like my dad's old. There's a seat that would just strap to a tree, and that's what you had. So that way you could be up against a tree to break up your silhouette, but you're sitting in a little chair or on a little cushion.
Yep.
And that's all it ever was. Well, I had that strapped up in a spot that I had scouted. I was like, man, this is good. We saw a bunch of trucks lined up on the entrance in there, but just from scouting and going all around there, I knew where those guys' stands were, because this area you could leave stands up and stuff like that. I get in there, set up my little seat, and sit down, and get all settled in. It's right before daylight. Sun's starting to come up, and all of a sudden I hear bark scraping off a tree, and I look over 50 yards from me. Dude's climbing a tree. I was like, all right,
Son of a bitch.
Time for me to leave. Yeah.
That's how it
Had a
goes,
bobcat
dude.
walk up to me.
No
but-
way. See, that's
Like,
but that's still
yeah.
cool. Like, to me, that's probably cooler than seeing a deer. I'll take seeing a bobcat just because I've never seen one, and I would love to add that to my checklist of things I've seen in the wild. Actually, I finally saw my first coyote just scooting through the woods last season. I saw a glimpse of a bear once, but I've seen guys that see like is it an otter or whatever the hell it is,
Yep.
Yeah, dude, like that would be. Those are just really cool things you see on Discovery Channel all the time that you see in the wild, and you're like, whoa, what is this? Holy crap,
Yeah, so this bobcat scared the piss out of me. It was still dark, and I just hear something coming down the trail, and it was the exact same trail that I had just taken in. And I see it, and it's a little critter. I'm like, oh, it's something small. And I'm brand new to bow hunting at the time, so I knew that I had to get in close to things, but this bobcat's probably 5 yards from in front of me and hasn't stopped. And I'm like, so I just draw back out of panic because I'm thinking this thing's about to jump on me. And it stops and looks at me and then takes off running the other way.
Yeah, it's done.
My brain still didn't even register fully what it was until it ran away, because then I heard that like a bobcat would run. So it was cool, but it scared the hell out of me at the time, like heart rate through the roof to where you can hear it thumping in your ears.
I call myself the okayest hunter, and I've spun up this whole okayest hunter thing on Instagram. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But I have a buddy that he kind of inspired it, and he's the kind of guy that he's a city boy. He don't hunt. He likes to come with us for gun, for the camaraderie. He'll put on his blaze once a year, and it's a blaze that I had from when I was in high school. That being said, he's also a Marine, and he's one hell of a marksman and can pick anything off like a sniper. He was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps, and he's served overseas. And so he's a badass, but he doesn't hunt. But he likes to hunt with his buddies. And so, like, he literally one year came with us for the first time ever and took a crap basically where he was hunting. He's got a big dip in his mouth. I mean, if he had a cigarette, he probably would have been smoking that. He didn't give a shit, And he saw a really big 10 or 12 point buck to his recollection. He's like, oh shit, there's deer back here. So he gets his rifle ready, and then by the time he had that thing lined up, it was out of sight. And then next thing you know, another buck came by, and that happened to be a 7-pointer. So he shot that one. It was a perfect shot. And I'm trying to think of the hell I was going with this. But that's what it was. He
didn't do anything serious.
Nah, he didn't give a crap, but he got a deer. My one buddy who's just like really serious and trying for years. He's like, what? You come there first year, you take a shit right there, and you get a deer. What the? He's all pissed. And he was walking back, and he goes, dude, I was walking out in the morning. It was 0 dark 100, and these thunder chickens came freaking flapping out of these trees and scared the shit out of me. Why didn't anyone tell me? What was that? I was like, well, those are turkeys coming out of roost. He's like, holy hell. Here I am thinking I'm in this safe forest, and all I got to do is shoot Bambi. And next thing you know, I got these giant thunder chickens coming out of the freaking woodwork. So Big Bad Marine was scared by a couple of turkeys. And that's my buddy who I call the okayest hunter. And he's a good guy. But that's one of those things where you say the bobcat scared you. Well, my buddy got scared by some turkeys, which, by the way, will scare the shit out of anybody if you don't know it's coming and it's dark and they're coming out of roost.
Oh, yeah.
They're loud.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. So I'm backtrack a little bit. So my dad taught me almost everything I know about hunting, and what he didn't teach me, whatever I didn't learn on my own, he taught me everything like in person was. And then what he didn't teach me, his family friend, who I pretty much consider like a grandfather, Claire taught me. Claire is salt of the earth. You know, he was in the Army during the Vietnam era, but they never sent him overseas. He just drove trucks in Michigan. And my dad is a former Marine, so we all got that little bit of a rivalry going.
Yep.
And but Claire, he came back from serving in Vietnam and worked on a ranch his entire life, and that man's a farrier, and he taught my dad how to be a farrier, which is someone who puts horseshoes on horses, for those who don't know what a farrier is.
I'm glad you told me. I was just like, yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, they trim up the hooves and put horseshoes on horses. So that's what my dad and Claire do for a living. But Claire, I'll put that old man up against anybody. He'll outwork anybody I've ever met. I've never seen somebody who works so hard. But the first thing Claire does when he gets to a tree stand, he takes a piss at the base of it, lights a cigarette, climbs up in the stand, and hunts. And you look at him like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Oh, it don't bother them none. And he's got some of the biggest deer on the wall that I've ever seen. And from Florida, when he goes out west, the couple times that he's gone out west, he's got muleys up there. And it's just kind of funny that you were saying that the Marine did that. And you talked about big bad Marine being scared by a turkey. I watched my dad about shoot a turkey with a 7 mag just out of fear when I was probably 9 or 10. We're walking in, and we had a lease in Georgia, hunting down in the river bottoms. And as soon as we get down in there, we're just kind of walking down a gravel road, and turkey was bedded on the ground. I don't know why, it was a hen or so, but it kicked up, and, you know, that little that they do when they get up.
Yep.
But Dad, like, flips around, about throws his rifle up, and throws it up on his shoulder. I'm like, boy, you going to shoot the damn turkey? He's like, no. And we walk a little further. He goes, that thing scared the fuck out of me.
Dude, they're no joke. And when those wings are flapping, it's like whoosh, 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 and they come crashing out of trees like, you know, big clumsy dumb birds that they are. Yeah, it's no joke. So let's shift gears. We got some time. You know, I asked you at the beginning of the show to start to plant the seed of your most memorable hunt. You know, as you've had some time to think on that subconsciously, what comes to mind for you? This is, I say every time, this is my favorite part of the show because everybody's most memorable hunt is so drastically different, and I just love hearing it. And apparently people don't ask this question on podcasts a lot. So if you got a memorable hunt, man, I'm really excited to hear it.
Oh, man, I got 2 that come to mind instantly. The first one, and it's not really a in-depth story like the second one, but to me it's more special. Hunting Florida with my dad, got into bow hunting and this hunt spanned over 3 seasons. And I say 3 seasons because it took me 2 years to get this deer, but the first year we're out there with bow season, I had my dad's old Bear Whitetail 2. I mean, it was his first bow when he started hunting back in 1980 whatever. And that was my first bow, and I'd shot a hog with it before, but that's beside the point. I had this monster 8-point walk out in front of me, broadside, and I mean, just a giant deer, the biggest deer I've ever seen at the time. And I saw a 16-point on this same exact ranch with 2 drop tines. And this deer, just being an 8-point, dwarfed him. Looking back, he was probably a 140 class 8, but, you know, the deer down there, a mature buck's 160 pounds. So you put 140 rack on a 160-pound deer, he looks like he's 190, 200. So he comes by broadside, and I grab my grunt call, and I'm grunting at him. I'm bleating at him, doing everything I can, because in my mind, man, he's out there 50 yards, and this deer would, like, look in my direction and then go back to browsing or whatever, like he had not a care in the world. Completely forgot I had a rangefinder in my pack, so I never ranged him or had any idea on what distance he was at. He ends up walking away. I'm shaking so bad looking at him that I drop my binoculars out of my hand, and they fall to the tree stand. Doesn't phase him. He just slowly walks himself away, goes on his merry way. I get down, grab my binoculars. I think about putting a spot and stalk on him. And I'm like, well, I'm going to mess up this spot, so I better get back up in the tree. When I finally remember I have a tree stand or a rangefinder, I hit the little scrub bush that he walked in front of, and it was 38 yards. And, at the time, my maximum effective range was 40, so I'm like, okay, that's okay. I don't know if I could have hit him anyway, but, man, I could have probably shot him, and you know how that game goes. Well, my dad and Claire come and pick me up off this ranch, and I say ranch, it's a cattle ranch. It's not high fence.
Sure, good clarification there, yeah.
I have to clarify that. So I jump out of this tree stand, and I probably clear the entire ladder in 2 steps. And they're like, yeah, he saw a big one. And I had seen little bucks all over me that morning, but that buck was just giant. So we go and start trying to chase him all the rest of that season. And I saw him during gun season way up, and I was basically in the swamp in his house. And he came out at the spot that I least expected it. He was kind of facing me. And he just jumped back and got up to where I could never get a shot and stayed probably for about an hour blowing at me just over and over and over again. Never came out. I'm grunting, snort wheezing, everything I can to get him to come out so I can get a shot off on him, but he never once came back out. Fast forward to the following year, we go out there, and I'm hunting hard. I saw a nice wide 10-point with short tines that I was after. A bunch of other good-looking deer, but never got a shot at a shooter. So we go and we're talking, and we're like, let's just go in here and see if we can't help the rancher out and kill some hogs. So we throw on a bunch of arrows, and like I'm wearing a t-shirt and jeans, nothing fancy, just hog hunting gear. We're riding in the truck, and with Florida, you're allowed to shoot from a vehicle, but it has to be stopped and in park and the keys out and all that good stuff.
Damn.
And the reason why is because a lot of guys hunt from swamp buggies down there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only certain places that you can get with these buggies. So I'm sitting up in the bed of the truck, riding around in the thing, and we're looking for hogs. So with hogs down there, there's no holds barred. You honestly don't even, and for anybody listening that's wanting to go down to Florida to shoot hogs, you don't need a hunting license to kill hogs.
A hog get
you can go down there and
drop
start.
It like it's hot. That's what I've heard.
Exactly. So we're out there and just kind of cruising along, and I jump up in the bed of the truck because this is a spot where it's a big oak hammock, and there's a lot of hogs that usually are up in that oak hammock eating the acorns. And I look over, and in the ditch across the canal is a buck, and it's a shooter. So I start banging on the thing. I'm like, shooter, shooter, shooter. So my dad stops, and I draw back in the bed of the truck. And Dad starts cussing at me. It's like, that deer's 60 yards out there. Let down. You can't do nothing. So I jump down out of the truck and get up on there and start putting a spot and stalk on him and start sneaking up on him, getting as close as I can. This buck looks up at me, looks over, goes back down browsing. I'm like, okay, cool, he didn't see me, and I get it closer and closer and closer. And he lifts his head up and he turns and starts to walk, and I draw back, and he steps up on the berm. And I told my dad, I go, yards. He goes, 30. And I put my 30-yard pin on him and smoked him. Perfect double lung shot.
Nice.
Watched him mule kick and take off running. And what makes that hunt so special to me is not only was it my first buck ever with a bow, but my dad was right there to see it all go down. And that was one of the last hunts I had with my dad. Not that he's passed away or anything, just he kind of is over it, whereas like buying the out-of-state licenses and stuff like that.
That's it, man. Don't make me tear up on the show. Holy shit! Thanks for.
Yeah, man. Like it's just one of those moments. And then there's pictures I got where it wasn't even planned, and I didn't notice until months after. But it's me and Dad dragging this buck out, and come to find out we're wearing the exact same color shirt, the exact same color pants. Like it just was awesome altogether. And the buck was a 4.5-year-old 8-point. I mean, I don't think he even scored 110 inches. But
I'll take a 4.5-year-old deer any day, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, 165 pounds. And what kind of sucked was we waited 20 minutes because, the whole rule of thumb, you shoot double lung, you wait a half hour. You shoot a hard shot, you wait 15 minutes to 20 minutes. You shoot a liver, you're waiting 4 hours, if not overnight, Little guidelines that I got taught growing up. So we're waiting, and we go out there, but the buzzards are so bad down there that they were awning within that 20 minutes. So I get up on the
We got to worry about coyotes up here, but buzzards sounds like they're a little bit quicker to the punch.
Oh, yeah. So I get up on the berm, and I see a gaggle of buzzards out in the pasture. I'm like, okay, where are they on? And I see an antler. I'm like, they're on my deer. And I start running, sprinting across this pasture at these buzzards. I mean, I jumped through a barbed wire fence to get after these damn birds. And I'm just sitting there yelling, hey, to get them off my damn deer. And they don't even budge. Dad gets up on the berm and whistles, and they all scatter. And ended up grabbing my buck, and they bit from his nostril to his lip, so they messed up my cape a little bit. Took his eye out and took his nuts out, but other than that,
that's quick work. Wow, they know what they're doing. Holy crap!
No, they weren't messing around. So that was one of my memorable deer. And then a rifle kill, and this was that 5-point I was talking about a little bit, and it's a quicker story than the other one, but it's still like one of the coolest stories that I've ever had. So we had this buck on camera, and he ended up grossing 115 inches with just forks. He has a brow tine that's maybe 1.5 inches. Nothing too crazy. And we had this buck on trail cam, and everybody on the lease said he shoot on sight. You see him blasting, and I mean, it's September, and you could see folds and wrinkles in this buck's neck. So you knew he was an old, mature deer.
Sure.
And we ended up...
We call that the dad bod buck.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a stud. I mean, didn't have squat for a rack, but, I mean, just a giant deer. And we get out. I got out there, and at the time, I had the girl I was dating at the time. She was out there with me because whole plan was to get her a deer, and I'm shooting a 7-mag rifle, and it wasn't a big a deal. So we get up there, and we had an option. It's 8 hours from my house where the lease is, and by the time we got up there, it was 2 a.m. in the morning. And the option was sleep 4 hours and don't unpack, sleep 4 hours, and then just get up and hunt in the morning, or get camp set up and get all situated and sleep 2 hours. So we elected for the sleep 4 hours, slept in the truck, next morning I wake up, get dressed, unload the four-wheeler, get everything ready that I could, just basically bare minimum that I needed to go hunt. And waiting on her, I'm cussing the entire time because we're late as could be. Sunrise was at 6:30. It wasn't until 6:35 that I'm leaving camp. So I'm cussing the entire way, like, we're so late. Sunrise has already happened. So I'm flying on my four-wheeler as fast as I can to get to the spot where I can get to my stand. I get to the corner of the field, and it's cut soybeans. So those of y'all that know up here in the Midwest, cut soybeans looks like a giant dirt patch. There's no food there for them. There's no reason for them to be there. It's just dirt, an open field. So I get there, I'm like, damn, they harvested the soybeans, so I don't know how this is, but just a feeling in the back of my head said there's a buck on this field. So I start scanning the field, and sure enough, off in the distance is that buck standing there scanning the field, doing the exact same thing I'm doing. And I'm like, it's the forkhorn. It's the forkhorn. And I kept saying that over and over again. So I go and grab shooting sticks that I had in my pack out and get my rifle set up, drop down to a knee, and realize I didn't adjust my sticks all the way. So they're falling. I had to readjust my sticks. I'm freaking out, shaking. And at the time, like I said, we're trying to get her a deer. So I'm like, you want to shoot it? She goes, a forkhorn? No. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm shooting.
Okay,
and
cool. I'm out here for you, but
grab my range. Yeah, and I had a buck tag, so no sweat on me. I wanted to kill this deer anyway. So I take my rangefinder. My rangefinder is not even picking him up all the way across the field, so I know he's at least 500 yards out there. And tell her, I'm like, give him a damn grunt call. So I adjust my sticks. I'm sitting on my sticks on the rifle. I grab my gut call, and I go back, This deer comes sprinting at me as fast as I've ever seen a deer run towards me. He's kicking up a cloud of dust in the back. I mean, just coming on a beeline straight for me. I'm like, oh man, here he comes, here he comes. He hits the field was kind of a kidney bean shape, and he hits the turn in the field, and he slows down to kind of a trot. And I knew just from ranging that field before that it was 177 yards across the field from where he was at. And he slows down, he starts bowing up, hair bristling on his back, ears laid back, and he starts just, just ready to fight. And I send it, and I watch this shoulder lurch, and he runs off into the brush. And I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm so stoked that I shot this buck and that he came at me like he did. And I go and I find my blood. I put my shooting sticks down for the blood. We climb up in the tree stand to continue out the hunt. And as I'm sitting in the tree stand, I hear over in the direction where that buck ran in, I'm hearing like leaves moving and just a thumping sound, just like. And I look over and I see tines, and I see tines start to come up and fall down, and come up and fall down. So I was literally watching my buck do his final kicks right there from the tree stand. And then finally, we saw no other deer come out, and I was getting too antsy from watching him kick. I was like, all right, let's go get him. So we went and got him, got back to the camp. And it was funny to me because here I am setting up camp. My cooler's doesn't have ice in it. I'm not ready for a deer at all. Had no inclination that I was going to even get a shot at a deer at all. And here I am with a 220-pound, 6.5-year-old 5-point on the back of my four-wheeler that dwarfs the four-wheeler. So it was just that buck sitting center in my room just because he's the oldest deer I've ever taken. And thinking back, I think I missed him a couple times the year prior in archery season. So, it was just awesome how I was able to capitalize on that buck.
Those are both really great stories, dude. It's just, for me, like, it's always just exciting to even, like, see a buck. that's where I'm at, and beyond that, anything else is all bonus. Even to see a deer, that's bonus. And just to be out there is the gift, and to be on public land is the privilege. So you have the privilege, the gift, and then the bonus. And then to get one, it's like, well, now I'm eating, right? And if you get something mature, you've really earned it. And that is, to me, something that proves that you're worthy of the challenge. Getting an older deer that maybe has the rack to go along with it is something really special. And if you do it on public land, you've frickin' earned it. And it sounds like you've earned it, man. And you're also educating yourself along the way. You're going to QDMA courses. You're doing so much within the industry with Johnson Outdoors. Like, you're kind of covering all of the bases, but you're certainly not taking anything for granted. You really appreciate the chase and you respect the game.
I appreciate that, man. I try to do the best I can, and I've been blessed all in all. Like, the opportunities I've been given, I'm at a loss for words with it all.
You're doing great, dude. And like I said at the beginning of the show, your demeanor, you seem like the guy that can't have a bad day. Whether that's true or not is, that's up for debate, and we're all humans. So, of course, that's probably not completely true. But that demeanor carries a lot of weight in this industry in today's day and age, when we're trying to avoid people from leaving the industry and also helping at the same time getting people into the industry. And by the industry, I mean like getting people excited about hunting. And you're doing a great job of that. That positive demeanor, like, positivity is contagious. One of my favorite quotes is, oh gosh, my brain, the scotch has gotten to me, is, optimism is a force multiplier. And what that means, a force multiplier, is, if I had a bunch of hammers and I was going to pound them into the wall, or a bunch of nails, I should say, and pound them into the wall, a hammer is the force multiplier. A nail gun really is a force multiplier, but that's giving you the leverage to do a lot more with less. And that positivity and that optimistic attitude and demeanor that you carry is a force multiplier that gets more people more excited about getting out there and chasing what they believe is their trophy. Whether that's a spike buck, a basket, or 150 class deer, whatever that looks like, it's different for everybody. It's just like when you go to the gym, we're all entering at different stages in the game. You might see the guy with the six pack and the huge guns, but maybe your goal is to just trim 20 pounds. Maybe your goal is to lose 200 pounds. Or maybe that guy with the six pack was at 200 pounds 2 years ago. You never know where everyone's at in the game, and respect people and where they're at within the process, because they might just be starting out deer hunting, or they might really be after that mature buck. You just never know. But your demeanor is great, dude. You're doing a good thing in the industry right now, and I respect that a lot, which is why I'm very happy to have you on the show. I'll get off my soapbox. I've been talking for like 3 minutes straight.
No, you're fine. Hell, I've been talking way longer, and I really appreciate that. And as far as like what you were saying, that's something I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit, and I know I didn't really bring it up, but I'm going to get up on my soapbox now. We're all hunters together, so everybody listening, I'm sure we don't really have an issue here, but everybody's a hunter together, and it's like Hoss was talking about with the Pittsman-Robertson Act.
Yeah.
Everybody bought that hunting license. Everybody bought their deer tag, so every single person has contributed to the conservation and the pursuit of these animals that we love. So there should be no reason that anybody, regardless if you shoot a buck with a crossbow, vertical bow, a rifle, a slug gun, whatever, that we should be bashing each other online. I mean, anything, you need to be lifting each other up, because like, I know my first deer that I ever shot was a button buck. And 8 years old, if I had some jackass going, oh, that's just a button buck, he ain't even gotten the milk off his lips yet, or whatever. That's going to really damage potential of a future hunter. And then you got these guys where they come out and they shoot whatever legal buck they have. Shoot your legal buck. If you paid your tag, you bought your tag, and that deer got you excited and your heart pumping, it doesn't matter if it's a button buck, a spike, a forkhorn, or even a 180. If you were excited and happy to shoot that deer, own it. Be happy with that deer. Don't go making excuses saying, hey, I should have waited another year, but meat in the freezer. No. If that deer got your adrenaline going, got your heart pumping, and you are happy with that deer, own it. Kill that deer. Like, that's my soapbox with it, because I shoot little bucks when I could, and I've shot basket racks. I have yet to kill a Pope and young buck. And that's why I always laugh, like, yeah, I have all this knowledge, but I can't put it to use worth of shit, because I can't kill a deer that's like over a basket rack. And that's just my personal goal, is to kill a Pope and young this year. And I figure this is my last year since I'm transferring next year. But, as far as everybody else starting out, everybody, and it's just like you said, everybody's at their own battle. They're at their own starting point. So for somebody else to try to dictate where you start, that's just asinine. Nobody goes out and says, oh, you need to buy a Ford truck right away. No, they say, hey, get you a vehicle.
It
doesn't matter if it's a beater that's... So,
no, that's good stuff, man.
I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but, as hunters, we need to come together and lift each other up and have that camaraderie, because ultimately, if you see a bunch of, for lack of better words, I'm sure you're going to have to throw the explicit title on there, but you see a bunch of dick measuring going on, there ain't no reason that that anybody's going to want to join this industry. And those of you assholes out there going, good, they don't need to be here. Well, maybe you're a part of the problem. Look in the mirror. You should want to
dude,
take
I
more
got plenty
people
of
out.
thoughts on that,
involved.
dude. We're in sync there, and not like the freaking boy band. I mean, if you're gonna bash folks, look, the day might be coming where you don't have any land to hunt because it's all taken away. So like, when I talked to D-Rock last week and we had an episode about the greater good of hunting, that's what I'm talking about. Public land is a privilege, and to stop people from getting into the hunting by bashing them, it's not doing anybody any good. So, dude, great topic. Thanks for kind of saying your piece on it. Let's wrap up with where people can find you and what you're up to and how they can get a hold of you, because I think you've been a real beacon of, positivity here today. And you certainly have a wealth of knowledge that I think people ought to be tapping into. So hopefully your inbox gets flooded with some folks asking some great questions. So go ahead and let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. So Instagram is probably the easiest way to find me. It's Johnson.outdoors. Pretty simple, straightforward. There's a YouTube channel, link on that Instagram profile, and the link for the blog if you're interested in that aspect as well. If you find me on Facebook, just kind of shoot me a message saying, hey, I know you from here, and I'll add you in. But, yeah, man, that's about all I got.
Good to go. Well, dude, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. I appreciate it. I value every guest. Thanks for sharing your memorable hunts, and thanks for everybody that tuned in and participated in the show.
Yep, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man.